Hi everyone, and welcome back to Liz Sews. I've gotten a lot of comments recently asking about how to make a foam cup bra. This is an example of a foam cup bra that I've made last month using the Emerald Air and Black Beauty pattern. You can see that once the foam is in the cup, it holds its shape really nicely, so it makes it much easier to take photographs of your finished bra. But there's some other benefits to using foam as well. If you're just starting out and you're seeing some puckering up here on your seam lines, foam is a great way to sort of like hide that. It's very forgiving because you're able to stretch the fabric over the foam and it won't have as many of those pucker marks. And you're less likely to see if the pattern doesn't fit you exactly perfectly because that foam sort of fills in the spots that it needs to. So this is what a foam bra would look like from the inside. You can see that I've left my foam unlined, and that is my preference. But you can also use a foam like this when you're making a swimsuit as well. And if you're somebody who quite frequently is concerned about headlights appearing under your clothing, adding a foam lining to your bra is a great way to feel confident that that's not going to be an issue. So now that we know what foam bras look like, let's take a look at the actual material itself. So first, let's take a look at what cut and sew foam is. And I'm sure you guys are all familiar with the Victoria's Secret style bra, and those use something called a molded cup. This is not that. So cut and sew foam, as you can see here, is really thin. It comes in a variety of thicknesses, but generally you want to use something like this, which is 1/8 of an inch thick. So yes, it's foam and it's going to give you that nice, soft, round appearance on the outside, but it's not going to really add very much volume or bulk to your bust line. So cut and sew foam comes in sheets like this, and sometimes when you get it, it can be wrinkly. You need to check with your supplier. Some of them can be ironed to get those wrinkles out, and some of them can't. So once you've gotten your cut and sew foam, you need to start working on your pattern pieces. So the Black Beauty bra already has foam pieces included with the pattern. But what happens if your pattern doesn't include foam pieces? You can really easily make them yourself. So here we have the Boylston bra pattern, and I've got this wire here just to help visualize. What you want to do is remove the seam allowances from everywhere that the wire won't be touching. So if you think about your bra and you have this lined up, you sew this into position, your wire is going to go around the outside, right? So it's going to touch here, bottom of this piece, the bottom of this piece, and up again on the side of this piece. Everywhere else you're going to want to remove the seam allowances. So all those places that I've just done little hash marks on here, we're going to cut off those completely. That's why it's super helpful when pattern designers give you the seam allowances already on the pattern. What I like to do is just print out duplicate copies of my pattern, and then I'll cut the seam allowances off of one, and that will be my foam. Make sure to write foam on it so you don't get confused. And then I'll keep the other one as is. That's all you really need to do to modify your pattern pieces so that they will work with your cut and sew foam. Like I said, just remove any seam allowance that the wire won't be touching. And if we go back to the Black Beauty bra pattern here, and you can overlay it, so this is the original pattern piece for the fabric, and if I put my foam one on top, you can see the only difference is she's removed that seam allowance on the upper edge. Of course, on the bottom edge of this cup, that's where the wire is going to sit, so she didn't remove the seam allowance there. Now that you have your pattern pieces picked out and altered, I'll show you how to cut out the foam. Once you have your pattern pieces altered for foam, all you need to do is cut them out. So cut and sew foam, just like most bra making material, has a little bit of stretch in one direction and a whole lot of stretch in the other direction. So you want to pay attention to your dogs or direction of greatest stretch. So on this pattern piece, it's running that way, and so I want to make sure that I have my greatest stretch running that way as well. What I like to do for cut and sew foam is I will just lay my pieces on top of it, And it's not really that easy to use a rotary cutter, so I'll just take my pen and draw around it onto the foam. The one thing I'll also say is when I'm working with foam, I don't want to cut in on my notches. You just want to mark it with your pen. So I'll just draw around this with my marker or pen, and then then you can just cut it out with scissors and you don't have to worry about maneuvering your rotary cutter around the pieces. Once you've got your pieces cut out, we can get this over to the machine. So here we have our 2 pieces of foam. So you see I've just drawn in my notches on both of those with a pen. You don't want to cut into them at all because we've removed all the seam allowances, obviously, and so you don't want a big hole in the middle of your cup. So you just want to match up those notches. What I like to do is I start from that, and then I just walk my seams together till I get to the end. That way, if you've got any inaccuracies in your cutting, you should still have your notches lining up. So I'm just going to drop my presser foot. And what we're going to do is a zigzag stitch. I'm going to go slightly bigger than what is the standard zigzag on machine. So I'm doing 3.5 millimeters in width. And you just want that zigzag to bite both pieces of fabric as you move along. And you're just going to work it with your hands and just sort of butt them up, not overlap them, and follow that seam. Here's what it's going to look like when it's sewn up. You want to make sure and give it a little tug. Make sure you don't see any light coming through that seam. This one looks really good. Now you're thinking, oh my gosh, you have a bunch of marks on here. And I do, but I'm just going to make that covered with the fabric from my bra, so you're never going to see that. And this is what you're going to see from the inside. So all you're going to see from the inside is that seam. I like to leave mine naked like this, but you certainly do have the option of covering this seam up. I've seen some bras that use just like a bias tape in the self fabric and they put it along that seam to make it a little bit prettier, or you could use twill tape or something like that. But for me, I think naked is just fine. So obviously I've shown this on a 2-piece cup, but it works for however many pieces you have. So if you have a 5-piece cup that's your favorite bra, you can certainly add foam in this same method. So the next step is to put together your fabric, so the fabric you want on the outside of the bra. Now if you're familiar with any of my other tutorials, you know I tend to like to do the stitch and flip method so that the fabric is lined. I haven't done that here. I just have my 2 pieces of fabric that I've sewn together, and then I top stitched it down on the top like this. So you have all of your seam allowance raw and exposed on the inside. And the reason that we're doing that is because you're actually going to line it with this foam instead. So the first thing you want to do is make sure, okay, this is the side we want to cover, right? It has all of those markings on it. And we just overlay our fabric on top of the foam and just pin baste it into place. So I'm using a bamboo jersey for this, so it does have a little bit of stretch. If your fabric has stretch like this, you can always just pull it a little bit taut over top of the foam to get it a nice clean look. But feel free to use rigid fabric for this as well, and you can just, you know, again, pin baste it in along all of the sides. So I'm going to baste this on with my pins and show you what it looks like. So here's what it looks like once it's all pinned into place. You can see it looks a little bit scary, but I've just lined up the edge of my fashion fabric with the foam and pinned all around it. So you have a couple options at this point for finishing the top of your cup. So the bra that I'm making right now, which is the View A of Emerald Erin's Black Beauty bra, it's going to have fold over elastic that covers the top of this cup, goes across the bridge, and then comes back up the other cup. So I don't have to do anything right now. But if you're doing something where the cup is inserted into the cradle already with a finished top edge, you can certainly do that now. So here's an example of a Black Beauty bra, and this would be view B. And in view B, the top of the cup is finished before you insert it into the bra. So you see I've got a lace edge on the outside here, and I wanted to make sure I kept all those pretty scallops. So all I've done is finish the top of my foam cup in a fold over elastic, and then I've tacked the lace in a few strategic spots. So here, 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 and then there's another one over here. So I went through at all the low points of the scallop and just tacked them in. But you can see it's pretty free floating in between the lace and the foam cup itself, and that just makes sure that the lace is always covering the foam cup. So you need to make that decision of whether you're going to finish the top of the cup now or later, and then you just treat this whole piece as a single unit. So this is the cup to your bra, and you're going to, sew this along the wire line just like you normally do, and everything is going to be exactly the same. The only difference I would say is I would highly recommend, once you've sewn this into place, sort of grading down that foam just a little bit to reduce the bulk in your wire line. So that is all you need to do to make a modification to include foam cups in your bra.